Hi, I'm Wes, the Explosion, and I love Smash Brothers. I've played them all, but there's one that's typically considered the weakest, Brawl. Kinda wondering if they're counting the original 64 in that contest, though maybe the simplicity appeals to some people. Either way, while I still like Brawl, I kind of agree. Though oddly enough, it's probably the entry I have the strongest memories of. So let's reminisce a bit and talk about what exactly makes this one stick in my mind so much. When the game was first announced, it was pretty exciting because it was a new Smash Brothers title, and who doesn't love those? Even when no one else in my friend group had a GameCube, people still wanted to play Melee, so throwing it on a console people actually owned was a big deal. I wouldn't have to drag my system around with me everywhere. Just my controllers! On that note, I think I was a little worried about what the game would look like on a goofy console like the Wii. I mean, I think they did clear up that GameCube controllers would be compatible pretty early on, but with final smashes, the super moves added to Brawl disrupting the action, it seemed like it could make it a completely new game, and while I was excited for Meta Knight and Wario, I also had to wonder what them putting in third-party characters would have the final roster looking like. After all, before that, it was limited to Nintendo characters, and opening the floodgates could lead to some really weird places. I will admit though that I don't really remember the announcement trailer all that much, me needing to look it up to confirm what was shown. The big thing that kept me excited for the game was Smash Dojo, which had daily updates. And if that sounds like too much, well, not every announcement was created equal. Some days you'd get a stage, others a new music track, sometimes just some basic notes on how something in the game would work. Part of the fun was not knowing what would pop up. Would you get something cool and exciting, or something kinda boring, like, how to take pictures? It's listed here, so I guess it was one. One of the ones I do really recall was the jazzy remix they put together for the Revenge of Meta Knight. For a few weeks, I'd start each day by playing the sample they put up on Smash Dojo. And of course, the most exciting announcements were the fighter reveals. For Smash 4 and Ultimate, they definitely took the trailers to the next level, but what was so fun about Brawl was that you couldn't really predict them. A Nintendo Direct, E3, or the Game Awards, you know something is coming. With Smash Dojo though, you could sit down for lunch, check the site expecting nothing much, and have Sonic the Hedgehog dropped in your lap, with it not being immediately clear who it was in the trailer before he shows up center screen and they hit you with that live and learn. While they threw a lot of good characters in, that was definitely the highlight. I was in college at the time, and during days I had classes, I would head to the library to borrow a laptop for the big gap in my schedule rather than going home, and the update would drop during it. I'd always check that with headphones on, and then just kinda screw around for the rest of the time, and as luck would have it, Sonic was announced during one of these days. I was grinning, I was excited, I wanted to get up and shout, but I couldn't because library. So I just settled for watching it a few more times and thinking about how cool this game was going to be, despite my previous trepidation. I wasn't all that hyped for Snake, since I've never played a Metal Gear game, so I couldn't even remember whether he was included in the initial reveal or not. Sonic though, I liked and was pumped when Sega started putting his games on Nintendo consoles. Him being in Smash felt like the culmination of that and the final sign that the console wars were over. It also had me wondering if maybe some other blue platformer mascot could conceivably get in the game. But no, we'd need to wait until next time, though it was still fun to dream about. Of course, this came with a price. I requested vacation time for Brawl, and then the game was delayed. I did this a second time to the same effect, and eventually just wound up requesting a few specific days once we were close enough to a release date that I felt semi-confident that it was the final. And why did all this happen? Well, I found out many years later that it was because Sega dragged their feet on letting Sonic in the game. Maybe if it hadn't been so awkward, they would have asked some other people to join in too. Who knows? My point is, Sonic ruined my vacation time. That and no one is too big for Smash. So when you're asked if your character can join, you say yes! I've had arguments about this concerning Final Fantasy and their stinginess, and I still maintain that Smash is one of the biggest marketing opportunities a series can get. I'd say the only game that doesn't really need it is probably Pokemon. To go back to Smash Dojo, the steady trickle of information and daily surprise kept me invested in the game. Plenty of titles announced stuff far in advance, without a lot in between, and by the time they do release, I kinda forget they were even a thing, but not so here. Mr. Sakurai talked about Smash Dojo in a video recently, and a lot of people in the comments talked about their memories of the site. It's really nice to have that as a shared experience. But hey, while we had to wait, international release dates weren't as common, so Japan got it early. Or maybe not as late would be more accurate. And because of this, I had some interesting opportunities come up. The first was the entire OST leaked online. I found a place to download it and copied it onto very many CDs. I kinda wanna say 13 or something like that. And around that time, there was a convention that my friend group and I wanted to go to that was a few hours away. Driving down, we slowly cycled through the disc, listening to what would be playing in-game, which was a nice way to tide us over. But what would be even better than that? Why, getting to play it early, of course. The convention had a Japanese copy of Brawl, which was the main attraction of the gaming hall. We waited in line for quite a while to get to play, a 4-player stock match, but with a time limit still. I picked Meta Knight, and before you say anything, no one knew how broken he was back then, and I certainly wasn't aware of how to make use of him effectively. Anyway, we were on the Pikmin stage, and I was winning by a stock when I noticed the game time getting close. I knew I could probably mix it up a bit more for the last 20 seconds, possibly take some more people out, but maybe get KO'd myself, and be forced into sudden death, despite me being so clearly winning. So I made a decision and started keeping my distance. Sometime during the countdown, one of my friends shouted about how they needed to KO me again, but by then it was too late. Not the only time I've used strategy to win, sometimes in situations I really should have lost, but I digress. We waited through the line one more time that weekend, and we got lucky since near the end of the match, there was a power surge resetting the console, so we were able to get another go right away, and try out more of the characters. I want to say that I was still in first on both of those, but the important thing is, I won the first round of Brawl I ever played, which I cannot recall for any of the other entries, and I also figured out how to easily dodge Lucario's final smash. Sure, it's not too hard, but one of my friends wanted to main him, and given how much a final smash could turn the tide, me just kind of neutering his made that a little more difficult. Maybe I should have felt a little bad about that. Anyway, when we got back, I called another friend who I played a lot of Melee with and told him about it. I remember finishing the conversation by asking if he was jealous, mostly joking, but there was a pause before he admitted, "Kinda, yeah." And you know what? I probably would have been too. When the game finally launched, I picked it up at GameStop. They were doing a national tournament with the release, which raised two problems. The first was, I don't think the rules were consistent between stores. I believe some were doing stock, some time, some with items, some with none. The other was that no one who hadn't imported the game had really gotten a chance to play and wouldn't know how everything worked. 3 rounds was not enough to make me a master. I had to decide whether to use Meta Knight, who I'd won with before, or Lucas, since I had made Ness previously and he would possibly, conceivably work similarly. I went with Lucas, won the first round, then lost the second, and have been questioning my life choices ever since. I could have been the American champion, damn it! But hey, that freed us up to get to the game earlier. We met up with my Melee friend, and in one of our basements, we hooked up 2 Wiis to 2 TVs, and sat down to play Subspace Emissary. The goal was to unlock everyone, but we were still feeling a bit competitive and wanted to see who could pull it off first. Me and the Melee friend were the ones who owned the consoles. Plus, we were both a lot better than the other two, him being just a bit better than me. Because of this, we paired off the best and worst on one team, the 2 middle on another, and while there wasn't much difference between our top 2, there was a huge gap between the bottoms. Yeah, I guess we can call them that. So, can you guess who won? I think my team stayed just a bit ahead, but near endgame, we really jumped forward, to the point where I wasn't even sure what happened. When I asked Melee friend later, he said he remembered me just starting to charge ahead without really waiting for my partner. So I guess you could say that my impatience clinched it. I was with the Lucario guy too. Maybe I really should apologize. Anyway, we got to the end, saw the brief Sonic appearance, golly gee, wonder why they couldn't give him a longer scene, beat Taboo, then went back to collect the 3 that weren't included in the main story: Toon Link, Jigglypuff, and Wolf. I also remember the other team crying foul because Taboo used his insta-kill wings on them twice, whereas we were only hit once. But after I had played the game a lot more, I realized that we didn't get lucky, that he uses them after a certain length of time passes. We really were faster. As for how the game went overall, well, we still had a lot of fun with it. We played it often, and them including the random option on the character select screen again meant that I practiced with everyone, and while I still mostly used Lucas, he grew on me, I got pretty good with pretty much the whole roster. I also remember fighting one guy who was huge into Sonic in a mirror match in the desert version of Mushroom Kingdom, KOing him, doing the "you're too slow" taunt, and despite him being one of the weaker players in our group, him getting worked up enough by it that he came back and kicked my ass. Probably deserved that, but I do not regret it. Also had a conversation where he tried to argue that Sonic's Final Smash wasn't broken, and I told him that my sister, who is not good at games by any means, had managed to KO me with it. Seriously, it lasts so long that if your opponent isn't good at dodging, you can kill twice with it. One of my siblings who played Meta Knight also made a stage where there was a platform up top that only he could reach, to hide out and wait for items. He thought he was clever, I was furious. And talking about Subspace Emissary as a mode rather than a challenge, I really loved it. I was moved by the Sticker Brush Symphony remix, had the bright idea to use the reflector on Rayquaza's projectiles, all the awesome cutscenes, and I kept looking forward to seeing what characters would show up where and how they would interact. Remember being very disappointed in Lucas, though. But he put on his big boy pants eventually. Still though, the main game felt a lot different. There's all that nonsense with tripping and the like, but there was something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. While I still beat most of the people I played with, I wasn't winning by as large of margins. I asked Melee Friend just to make sure it wasn't a me thing, and he agreed that something had changed. I figured they must have put in some sort of boost for players who were losing, which bugged me. But there was also the very real possibility that we were just so zoned into the previous entry that any change to the mechanics were throwing us, and that since it was now on a console that more than the 2 of us owned, other people were able to practice on their own, which closed the gap more than I was willing to admit back then. While maybe there was something beneath the surface, I could also be kind of an elitist tryhard. For the record, I think I would give it to Brawl over 64 just because of Subspace Emissary, but hey, I don't think Smash has a bad entry, so even if I were to rank it low, it shouldn't be seen as a diss. So yeah, Brawl not only gets a thumbs up from me, but its marketing was so on point and rollout so unfortunate, with the lucky early play softening the blow that, like I said, it's probably the one I have the strongest memories of. Do have some fun stories of the rest though if this video does well. But what about you? How hyped were you for Brawl? Did you visit Smash Dojo, or were you not even alive when this one came out? Did you have any fun stories, and how did you feel about the game as a whole? That'll do it for this week, so thanks as always for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into platformers, especially Mega Man. Show me your moves!